All right, so let's begin with matters education, which is on page 6, principles, publishers and concerns on the CBC rollout. Honorable Sabina Chege, perhaps I'll begin with you. So we saw how primary teachers responded to the new curriculum. The secondary teachers are saying, listen, we are all for it, but we need training as early as now. What would you like to see come from how TSC and just the Ministry of Education itself handles the training of secondary teachers, having learned the lesson with how they handled the primary teachers?
One of the things when we proposed the new curriculum, that we had agreed with all the stakeholders that training was key. And I think this is coming out even for us to ask ourselves, how do we even refresh our teachers? Not just because there's a new curriculum, because they are changing trends. And so for the principals in high school to ask the government or the Ministry of Education to prepare for training, and I know that their employer is TSC, this is in order. Though I'm worried when they say it's going to be implemented in high schools within the next 3 years. Because basically what was the plan was that for the students who are in class 1, 2 and 3, we were to roll out slowly. That means by the time they are getting to class 8, then they go to Form 1.
It's a bit of a while.
Yes. And so I'm also hoping that in our colleges, because now we have the new curriculum, then they have also changed their syllabus and of course the content on the training. Because we don't have to keep on getting the teachers, you know, the old ones, we can train them. But the new ones who are coming out of the colleges, have they factored in the new curriculum? Have they changed on the models and the approach on the training of our teachers? And as we have the nurses or even the doctors who are supposed to go back for training after every month, maybe 1 or 2 years, I think this should also happen to our teachers. There must be, once you are registered with TSC, because you are trained by TSC, you don't have now just to stick forever and say, now I'm a teacher. I think it's always good to, even the promotion that we see, it's good to factor in how one is also enriching themselves in their area. And so I think it is important for the principals to ask for training, but I also want to say it must be, we should look at our training itself wholesomely, not just for the principals who are in secondary school, but from our universities. I am a teacher by profession and I was trained as a teacher. If they are still using the same models that they trained us, then there's a problem. I think we just need to look at our university, the way the approach of training, the colleges, the Kagumo and the others, so that then the new teachers who are coming in then do not be surprised. But I also want to say that the implementation of the new curriculum should not be rushed. The way we had planned that from class 1, 2, 3, and then of course then the teachers, it's going to be gradual, not just to start and wake up one day. Yes, well, you cannot say by next year or next 3 years we are going to have the new curriculum in high school, and we started this last year. That means then it should be gradual. It should be in the next 5 years or so. So that then we grow with the ones who are in class 3, then they go to class 4, we continue changing the curriculum, and then we phase out. Because the ones who are going to be in high school, they have not been trained in primary school on the new curriculum. So we must do it gradually, and we go phasing out. And so by the time the ones who are now in class 3 gets to class 8, then when they go to Form 1, then automatically they continue with the new curriculum. I think that should be the best approach.
All right. Honorable Sholay, from where you stand, I know you interact with the teachers and the ground and the schools. Are they ready for this? Are we rushing it?
Okay, I think somehow the conversation is losing course, this entire conversation. And we're almost politicizing it and focusing on just one thing, that the teachers need to be trained. But let's be honest, every teacher knows that teaching pedagogy is universal. So that is why Kenyan teachers can train in Kenya and go to the US and teach. And excel as teachers. Isn't that true? How many of us? I know my sister was trained at Kagumba Teachers College, but she went and excelled in South Africa as a teacher. And the teaching methodology was different. So it is universal. They can adapt. And again, let's break down what this change is. The change is simply this. The 844 system was learning driven. So you had to cram, you had to acquire certain knowledge in order to pass a certain exam. But this other one is, but this current one is, the demand is actually to learn using the strengths of the students. So if you have a student who is a linguist, then you use language to teach them. If you have a student who is more outdoor and a naturalist, then you do more outdoor activities to teach them how to learn. If a student is musical, then you incorporate more musical items in the teaching method for that student. So that is what it is. You look at the child's competencies and use that to teach the same curriculum. And remember, the way the system had become is that a teacher was told, you have only succeeded as a teacher if that child gets an A in the exam. But we are moving away from that, because then we are saying we want to see if the student has acquired skills. So what happened to teachers? They stopped teaching. They became lecturers. They were just pushing knowledge into the student and then making that student pass an exam. So that is the change that is happening. So we're just asking the teachers, it is the same learning. Open a textbook from a book in the US, from a book from France, from a book in South Africa, and you'll realize the history, teaching reading, teaching numeracy is the same. So I think our teachers are being too dishonest when they start saying that we need some specialized training. Tell me, how come, okay, let's think about the teachers who went to, who were trained at Kenyatta University and so on, and some of our teacher training colleges. Today you'll find them at Hillcrest, you'll find them at St. Andrew's Turi, you will find them at Brookhouse. It doesn't mean Brookhouse wasn't teaching 844, but did they need a complete new training? All they need to do is be told this is now the teaching methodology that you shall use. So it's just changing the approach. So they talk about that they need, it's almost like people have to go to school again. That is not true. If that was the case, then all these teachers who are trained in the Kenyan system would not be going to teach in all these schools that have different teaching methodologies. Look, when Montessori schools came to Kenya, did they bring new teachers who went for a full training to come and teach Montessori? No. They are just being told the Montessori system is more practical based. The child is using and I think, you know, there are other kids who learn by using their own body movements and so on. The teachers are able to identify that and be able to use that, introduce that type of methodology.
Okay, let me bring in Honorable Gladys Wangon to this conversation. So, Boss Shelley says that we are politicizing already this conversation as it is, but a lot of people then are feeling like this CBC, whether it's in primary or secondary level, is being rushed. Hence the hiccups, hence the delays in certain places, printing of books, etc. What do you read from this? The rush into it. Why we are rushing into it that is now causing hiccups rather that we would have not had in the first place?
Well, I think any change is difficult, and especially when you're changing an education system. I don't think it's a walk in the park. But I want to say that I think teachers are right in asking for more consultation and even training. I mean, you have to know what you're getting into. You are supposed to take students through this process. I'm personally a supporter of the CBC, not for any reason, because my daughter had a chance when she was last year, when she was in class 3 to, you know, to sort of go through the CBC, and I saw a whole world of difference, because now we were not dealing with piles of homework. We were dealing with planting seeds. You know, mommy, take me a picture, print it when I'm planting this seed, take me to Nairobi National Park because I have to take pictures of animals and this and that. And we had a lot of time and it was beautiful. But then she had to leave it because now she is going to class 4 and it hadn't moved. So now she keeps on asking me, what happened to our good curriculum? She's back to her homework. But I'd like to say that teachers are right in demanding, you know, early training, because what high school teachers have seen is what happened to primary school teachers. Right. They were even interdicted for resisting. I want to say, Homa Bay, for example, we have so many teachers, especially teacher leaders, who are now interdicted. Why? Because they resisted in the way they know the new curriculum. And I want to tell TSC, please, on that one, you know, let people sit around that table, let people talk, because the teachers were expressing a concern on behalf of their colleagues and on behalf of many, many, many of us. So this interdiction, this punishment mode is not right. And I'll be moving further with this even on the floor of the House to say TSC should reverse these interdictions on the basis of resisting the curriculum. So what the high school teachers have seen is, look what happened to our primary colleagues. We don't want to get into that. And this system is 26333. So which means that you're 2 years pre-primary, 6 years primary. So they're not wrong, because we're not doing the 8 years, we're doing 6 years before you transit. So they're saying is if you're in grade 4, then we're looking at 5, 6, and then these children will most likely be on transition. So what we are So what they're asking for is not wrong. So I want to stand with the teachers on the training, but also say that I'm a big supporter of the CBC. Let's take it slowly, let's take it systematically, but most importantly, let's make it inclusive and understood by, most importantly, the stakeholder that is going to rub it off to the student. So I think the principals are very right. Let them sit with the ministry so that we are not facing the same problem we faced in primary. TSC, reverse those interdictions. Let us work from a point of consultation, not punitive measures.
When you say you're bringing this to the floor of the House, you want
I'll be raising a question to the ministry, I mean through the ministry to TSC, on why we have followed this path of interdictions and punishment to teachers who resisted the curriculum based, because they did not resist because they wanted to. Teachers want to teach, but they're saying, let's consult. The teachers union is saying, let's agree, let's be on board. And now we are in handshake season, and this is what I said earlier. We are in handshake season, let people shake hands, and we're not in punitive season, we are in handshake season. So even TSC should adopt the handshake mode and just try and bring everybody along.
All right, let me bring in Honorable Kim Kung. Is the government paying attention enough to infrastructure of schools in terms of facilities? It's one thing to roll out a new curriculum successfully. It's another thing if schools are missing in terms of infrastructure. News that is coming in on the local daily is the National Education Management Information System, NEMIS, which is supposed to collect data of students. Then that data is supposed to advise in terms of budget allocation and funding is not happening. A lot of schools have missed out on government funds just because head teachers are unable to access the new system. So in terms of infrastructure, is the government doing enough on that end to even prepare, or rather even as the rollout of this new curriculum is happening?
Thank you very much. I don't think so, because as Honorable Gladys Wanga has put it, due to the fact that there has not been any consultations, it makes you wonder why something is being put down people's throats and they're not being given a chance to express themselves. Teachers are the ones who are going to teach the students. It would be prudent for them to be given a chance to contribute and also sit on the table and agree on the way forward. Because if you have disgruntled teachers, then in the end, again, you have disgruntled children.
Right.
We are all parents. We send our children to school. I don't think any parent wants to send their children to school to fail or to be intimidated. The government should actually, first and foremost, ensure that if the new curriculum is being rolled out, then have they set in place the books that are going to be used? Because you don't just wake up one day and say we're going to roll it in 3 years. What are you rolling out in 3 years, right? Teachers have a right to say, yes, we need to be trained, because you also have new books. It's not what you've been used to all these years. So you can't walk into class and try and...
So how do we close these loopholes of school funding? We came up with an entire online system, NEMIS technology, but it seems not to be working. Prior to that, yes, still the Ministry of Education still had a funding under the budget, but we still seem to have loopholes in this. You find schools across the country, especially in those areas that are not as well developed. We've seen what was happening, was it in Lamu, the school? And we saw the state of it, the infrastructures, and students are still expected to perform. So how do we begin to close these loops within funding? Is it the system?
I think it's a lot to do with the system. The government has to improve all schools countrywide so that they're all at the same level. I would give an example and say we saw children, I think up north in Tiati, sitting on stones, didn't have power. So first and foremost, how do you expect them to use the tablets that they were given compared to a child in Nairobi who has better chances? So can they first start working on a level playing ground for all schools, ensure that each school has power, has water, has sitting space, children are not being rained on, and then we talk about rolling out an education system. I think, you know, that's basically what I would remark.
Honorable Chege Kumkung is bringing up a very interesting aspect. You're part of the stakeholders who consulted over this. What was the thinking behind it? Because, for example, Honorable Wanga just said that she took a child to take pictures at the park and print. What of that parent in Wajir who really doesn't even have electricity? They can't print. Are you condemning their children into exercising just certain parts of their abilities and not all of it? Because they're not exposed to all these things. Infrastructure capacity is really low. How did you think that was going to be bridged before the CBC was rolled out?
I think you'd allow me to just say, because that's something I think what she was saying is that she was using the environment that she has.
I agree.
But if you are going to be in Tiati or in Mandera,
so
what you do, you will use your environment. It will be about camels. It will be about the traditional dance and dress.
Doesn't that then limit the outcome?
No, no, no. You're using what is in the child's immediate environment and what they have an interest in within that environment to teach them.
Honorable Sholei, we are living in a country where there's a lot of marginalization. You cannot expose a child in Tiati to the same conditions a child in Nairobi has. They cannot come up with the same thing. I may have the ability to even code, but I don't have the access to the computer.
Or electricity.
Or electricity at all.
Let me correct
so
that.
will
That
I
is not
end
to
up
say,
dealing with camels just because I don't have access
No, I
to
thought
a
you were just
laptop?
talking about the issue of being available to a camera and a printer. But if you're talking about school facilities,
it's general.
Of course, general, there has to be, the way we know, a level 5 hospital has to have the following equipment. A level 2 hospital has to have this. So surely the Ministry of Education has the basics of this is what a primary school should have. And if a school has some X number of students, it will have this number of teachers. If it has an ECD, it's the ratio, I think it's 1 teacher to 30 students in the ECD. Yeah, so they have a ratio, so that is set. What we should be asking is they should apply that standard that they have across the board. And I've seen it live in Wasingishu. I know, for example, 2-year primary school, which is in Kapseret, has 250 students and probably has 20 teachers, you know. And then you go to Vumilia Primary that has 1,300 students and had 16 teachers. Then you go to Munyaka Primary, suddenly it has 42 and they have 1,000 and something students. So I've seen disparities even within a county. And I think what Mheshimiwa Kim Kung is saying is that there is need to ensure that there is equity across the board.
And that's the thing.
I think you asked me a question. Yes, the stakeholders were involved and there was a lot of consultation. And of course, there were things that were agreed that they must be done before the implementation or rollout.
Have they been done?
I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure. I've not seen. One of the things when you saw the ministry saying we're going to print the books, because one of the challenges we had with our primary schools was that even the reading materials were not there. And so there were some basics that were supposed to be implemented before the rollout. And I think mainly, even when we talked about the teachers' training, was on the approach, because the approach was different. And the approach this time was meant to be student-centered. And the motto was that every student has a potential. So we stop, like demonizing children who cannot get A's. And so when they did the 2633, we were supposed to look at the interventions. At what point do you then say this student can be very good in technical training? And so you don't have to force them to learn the difficult sciences and everything else, and they will never apply them anywhere. And I think majority of us went through the 844 system. That's what we did. We did physics, I don't know what, and we have never applied them anywhere. So there's no need.
I did not even. I didn't.
So I went.
You are 2 844s and 2 from 6.
And so the others
I
they
did,
know
I
now.
did the British system. So
you are lucky. So the others were lucky that they got into an education system that actually was able to establish their potential, and they excelled in that one line without being, going through everything, and then you become a master of none. And so this was the approach, and it was it's actually a very good system. What the teachers are saying, kindly train us, so that then we know then if we require books, if we need to print, and of course then I don't have a printer, or the parents don't have printers in their houses, then what is the alternative? So if could we print in school, and then we can go and and shade at home.
Maybe what I could, sorry.
But what I just want to say about this system, it is a good system that needs to be supported. And I think we all need to come together. As Wanga has said, let's not punish the teachers when they ask questions. And also for the teachers, let us accept the change that is coming. And then we have a solution. Because if we keep on pulling, each other, pulling from different sides, then the person who is the loser is the student.
So the teachers, especially in primary, felt that the timing that they were given for the training was not enough. So ideally, how long should training look like? A week, 2 weeks, a month?
Let me tell you, it all depends with the approach and what you're training. You can be trained for a week, and then you have everything that you require. And are you also willing, even if you take 3 years and you of course have blocked yourself from that kind of a system, and you still want to remain in the old system, even if it takes 10 years, you'll never say I've been sufficiently trained. I think what we require is goodwill. And as one was talking about coming to Parliament and asking a question on how those teachers have been punished by TSC, I have already looked at the amending the Education Act. This is something we started from last Parliament, and then it went to the Senate, and of course then we now ended there. So I've picked it up again, because if you're talking about 2633, we know is education at the lower level is devolved. We say the ECDs under the county government. But the big question we ask ourselves, if we are saying our primary is free, and also free secondary, especially day secondary school, why as a nation are we ignoring the foundation of education? Yeah. So parents have to struggle to pay for the students in the ECD classes, the first 2 years. But now with the new curriculum, that means then the first 2 years should be actually be in a primary, early education should be in primary school. Then where we do not have even teachers, we have very well trained ECD teachers. Yeah. I think they do the most difficult work. But at this point, we have left them to be paid by the county government. Okay. And you see, if you go to a normal village like where I come from, most of the nursery school are either owned by a church, or the person who is teaching there is an old, a teacher who retired and now has come back to teach these children. They have poor infrastructure. They are, the school even itself, the environment is not even child friendly. So I want the teachers who are in ECD also to be hired by TSC, so that there is equality. Yeah. You find that County A would pay their ECD teachers 5,000 shillings. County B will pay 20,000 shillings. And these are the ones who are doing most difficult work. Then why is the government not funding our ECD? Okay. Because the students have to pay a certain fee for these young ones to go to school. Then 2 years, then after, when you're going to class now 1, or now that is grade 1, then you access to free primary education. So it's a contradiction, and I think those are the things we should be looking at.
So before we bring in Wanga on this, you wanted to jump in. You just mentioned that you're not very sure whether all the guidelines were adhered to as agreed. From an education committee standpoint, should we have rolled this out now?
Well, if they are ready, yes. But if they were not ready, because, well, I am no longer in the education committee, so I'm not updated. I'm not well updated with where they did the training and everything else. But I think we actually, that's why I asked, are we really going out to high school? Okay. And so if Wanga's daughter in class 3, she went through the new curriculum, then it was prudent by class 4, then they were supposed to be ready. You don't train class 1, 2, 3, like what we're doing with laptops, and then it goes to class 4, then you now go back to 8, 4, 4. It's not even fair for the students, because they have already adapted in a new way of learning. Then you go to class 4, then you go back to the many books that the children were carrying and doing homeworks up to midnight and 1 a.m.
Total confusion.
So it's total confusion. And I think for the ministry, there's of course monitoring and evaluation on what was achieved, and make sure that if you then cover slide 1, 2, and 3, make sure by next year you have already trained the teachers in class 4 so that they pick up the new curriculum. And I think that's how it's supposed to roll out slowly. Don't now jump to say we are going to high school and already even in primary school, things are not working.
All right, Wanda, very briefly, we have to take a break now.
No, what I wanted to just add was, I think one of the programs that government had put in place was this last mile electricity connectivity. I think if that is followed to the letter, then every school in every corner should actually, at the end of the day, have power. So I think many schools have connectivity. In Homa Bay, for example, quite a number. There are issues with transformers which were not up to date, so many transformers blew in many schools, even though they tried to do the last mile. So if that program is looked at, then we will be looking at ability of our schools to actually do CBC, especially where power is required. So, but I think the bottom line on this is, let people listen to each other. Let the ministry listen to the teachers. I don't think even the primary teachers were opposed per se to the CBC, but they're just saying, wow, where am I going? Because everybody wants to be in control. Trevor, you want to be in control of your job here. You want to know what you're doing, even Zindu, So you're just saying, allow me to be in control of my space so that I know when I get into class, I know what I'm doing. Not that I just get in and so on. So nobody is a lesser stakeholder. So I don't want, what is not right is for the ministry to feel like we can proceed, let the unions say what they are saying. I think at every point, that's why I said it's handshake season. At every point, let's try to bring everyone along. Because what happened to my daughter should not have happened. After doing in class 3, she should have moved to class 4, as Sabina said. And I think the point Sabina is raising about ECD teachers cannot be gainsaid. It is very critical, and we'll support, you know, when that amendment comes. TSC needs to hire ECD teachers.
Right.
We cannot have people just moving. I mean, you're singing. Okay, anyway, let me just say that. People singing some weird songs in nursery school, and you expect that they are prepared enough to go to, you know, grade 1. I mean, because the teachers are so demotivated, the classrooms, if you see where our children are sitting for ECD, you know, counties on this part, counties have really let us down. Many counties. I mean, some counties have tried, but many counties have really let our children, especially our babies, down. They're sitting in mud, you know, and it's not just, it's just not right. In fact, while at it, we should even say CDF should even help us with ECD as well. So I think moving ECD to national government is important.
Okay.